Apple is apparently working on a 7th gen iPod Touch. In 2019, that doesn't really make sense, does it? But if you think about it, it actually does. What's up guys, I'm Benji from BenObi Tech and welcome back to another video. So, Apple apparently is working on an iPod Touch 7th generation. Here's why it actually makes sense. So Apple currently doesn't sell an iPhone that is less than $450. The iPod Touch 6th generation is still being sold for $200 and people are still buying it. The main market, of course, is parents who want to buy their child a phone, but they don't want to buy them a phone because they don't want them to have a phone number and receive random texts from random people or random phone calls, which you still do if you have WhatsApp and those apps. But I digress. And I mean, most people say that it makes more sense to buy something like an iPhone SE or an iPhone 6 that's used, are really cheap and sometimes even cheaper than an iPod Touch. But if you do end up going out and buying a used iPhone SE or iPhone 6 or a 6S or whatever, Apple isn't making any money off that. They sold that phone to you years ago, or a carrier did, and they made their money then. If Apple were to release an iPod Touch 7th generation, those people who would buy an iPhone 6 or an iPhone SE will want to go and buy the iPod Touch from Apple because it's from Apple, it's brand new. Apple is a trustworthy company to sell you something that actually works. Because, you know, depending on who you buy it from, some iPhones that are used are in really bad condition and some don't even turn on and people advertise them as working and they end up iCloud locked and whatnot. If Apple were to make a 7th gen iPod Touch, parents who want to buy their kids a phone for cheap and don't want them to have a SIM card, the iPod Touch is perfect for them. So if you've seen some of my past videos and live streams, I have talked about how the iPod Touch doesn't make sense anymore. But the more I think about it, the more it actually makes sense. So if Apple were to make a 4-inch or a 4.7-inch iPod Touch with a Super Retina display just like the iPhone XR, or maybe even the iPhone 8's display. Just make it a pretty decent display, make it better than the current iPod Touch. Add Touch ID to it, or maybe even Face ID, but Face ID is expensive, so I think if they did go bezel-less, then they probably wouldn't include any biometrics at all. Maybe not having any biometrics could bring the costs down, but I think it would be a good idea to keep the same design and just add Touch ID to it. So then you add just one biometric and make it a little more appealing to consumers. They could have put in an A11 Bionic or even an A10 Fusion chip would be great because the current 6th generation iPod Touch only comes with the A8 processor, and that processor is pretty outdated. So I think if they add an A10, that would be the best option, but they could even throw in an A11 just to make it a little bit faster and make it last a little bit longer. I doubt it. I think they should put in the A10 because it makes it cheaper. And of course, if this is targeted for children, then children wouldn't really need massive processing power. I think if they even added a better camera, something kind of like the iPhone 8, XR, or maybe even the iPhone 7's camera is good. Maybe even have portrait mode in there or something like that. And maybe the iPod Touch 7th generation could come in the same colors as the iPhone XR, and maybe even feature wireless charging with a glass back. That would be cool, but it would make the iPod a little bit thicker, I guess, and a little heavier, and maybe not as good for if you're getting it for children. But it would still be really, really cool if Apple added wireless charging to it. Because maybe parents have an iPhone XS, XS Max, or even a XR, and they wirelessly charge their phone and they have wireless chargers all over the house. Their son or daughter could have an iPod Touch and still wirelessly charge without having to pack any extra cables and stuff. I really, really doubt they would add wireless charging to it, just because it would probably make it a little bit more expensive. And also, bear in mind, the iPod Touch is very, very small. It's 4 inches. Unless they made it a 4.7-inch display, I doubt they would add a glass back and wireless charging, but still, would still be really cool. Before we move on, don't expect this thing to have a headphone jack, because Apple's removing the headphone jack from all their devices. They've just removed it from the iPad Pros. And if they did throw a headphone jack in there, probably wouldn't be able to fit that many features in this. And if they made an iPod like this and charged, let's say $250, maybe even stretching it to $300, I could see a lot of people actually being interested and buying one of these. At the end of the day, the iPod Touch is basically an iPhone without cellular service or a SIM card. So of course, it can be a downside, it can be an upside. It does pretty much the same things. So who would the 7th gen iPod Touch be for? Well, it would be for parents, as I said before, that want to get their child a phone but don't want them to have a SIM card. Of course, it'll be for iPod fans because I know there's a lot of people out there that love the iPod lineup and would really want Apple to refresh it. And I think the 7th gen iPod Touch would be perfect for people who like to listen to music a lot, but maybe they have a 32GB iPhone and they've used up all their storage and stuff, and they just want a device that they just have music on. So if they want to go out for a run, they can carry the iPod with them. It's light, it's portable, and it's just an overall pretty good device if you want to listen to music and stuff. Of course, you can install movies, you can install games, all without using any space on your iPhone. And yes, the iPod Touch market is not massive, it's pretty small, but Apple still sells a couple million iPods a year. And that's without updating the thing. If Apple gave the iPod Touch a little bit of an upgrade with a new screen, Touch ID, new processor, new camera, I think it would be a really good move for Apple, and they'd probably sell a lot more iPods than they do now because the hardware in the 6th gen iPod Touch is very outdated. And I think the 6th gen iPod Touch is probably another OS upgrade to go. I think iOS 13 will probably be its last. And again, if Apple sells it for like $250, I think it's still a pretty good deal. So there you go, guys. That is pretty much it for this video. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think about the iPod Touch. Do you think Apple should make an iPod Touch 7 or not? Or should they just discontinue the 6? Let me know in the comment section below. And of course, if you did enjoy this video, let me know by smashing that like button down below. If you're new, smash that subscribe button down below and ring the bell so you'll be notified every time I upload a video. You can get to my videos early and you won't miss an upload. And if you guys want to help support the channel, you can go ahead and get yourself some merch. Head over to BenObi.shop. Or if you don't want to get merch, you can go ahead and support me on Patreon or PayPal. The links will be in the description below. But for now, thank you guys for watching. I'm Benji from BenObi Tech, and I'll catch you guys in the very next video.